Hey, welcome back to Brain Power Unlocked. Dr. Kevin, I'm your host. Today, episode 3, thanks for tuning in. We're going to talk about the robot brain and your habits. Robot brain really is our established, ingrained neural networks at play. When we're not paying attention, we're going to revert to some of the same old habitual behavior that we always had. When I was a kid growing up, I was the youngest kid in my family. I had 2 older sisters, so I had to learn how to get my attention needs met. How'd I do that? Well, I was the only boy, so I learned a lot of different messages. Nobody ever told me point blank, "This is how you must be." But recognize this, when I came into the world, I didn't have software. My mind wasn't created yet. Well, the patterns in my mind weren't created. I had hardware, I had a brain, but I didn't have the software. So I came into the world, and the first thing I started doing is having experiences. And based on those experiences, I started to form my software. What does software mean? That means the beliefs and values and self concept that allow me to survive and to thrive. So, as the youngest child growing up, I wasn't the oldest family hero. I wasn't the one who rebelled against the traditional authority. No, I was the one who was given carte blanche, very few rules. I was wide open to be able to do whatever I wanted, and I was expected to use common sense. So often, when you see the youngest child, they're the charming manipulators. They learn how to, they grow up with all these older people around and learn how to get attention needs met. But even beyond that, right? You think about this. When I grew up, I wasn't as smart, as sophisticated as my 2 sisters or my parents. I was the cute little baby. Here's the interesting thing that happens is that often with the youngest children, they're the cute little baby, and that role never gets taken away from them. So they're the performers, the entertainers. I worked with one guy who ran a hospital in LA, youngest child. You wouldn't know it. This guy was straight and narrow in the business sense, but then you realize he was performing. And when I got to know him, it was amazing. He was a talented guy. He loved to do, he would he had a tap dance routine. He would do at the Christmas party for the entire organization. This guy knew how to perform. In all of this, I'm saying is to recognize that we establish patterns. We establish patterns in our thinking, and those patterns in our thinking, our self concept, our worldview, they drive how we show up. They drive the robot brain. When we're 3 years old and our brain is forming a million neural connections a minute, we're creating this cognitive framework. The cognitive framework then we carry with us for the rest of our lives. Most people never upgrade their cognitive framework. Most people never upgrade the software that runs their internal operating system. This is the beautiful thing and why I love speaking to groups, right? We've got keynotes that turn audiences and turn their idea of leadership on its head to create the most powerful level of engagement. You see, most keynotes I've seen that'll tell great stories, and I'm a great storyteller as the youngest child. But the thing that makes a keynote different is it changes people in their seats in that moment. And that's the beautiful thing about helping people to upgrade their leadership. Our keynotes bring the 4 foundations of conscious leadership to help leaders understand and disrupt those patterns that they developed early on so they can show up as the true executive that their organization needs, that their family needs, and so that they can unleash their own executive potential with it. Most keep doing the same thing they've always done. And everybody's heard the saying, you keep doing what you always did and expect a different result, and that's insanity. Yet everybody does it. And I'm here to tell you, I've worked with hundreds of leaders, and they all do it. We all do it as humans because we're good at being right. When we are right, we are doing nothing more than falling back into that robot brain. When the robot brain is in charge, plight of the expert, right? When you get really good at something, then you know you're right. But the hard thing is when that happens, your doors close and you become less keen and less aware of doing things differently because your expertise begins to cloud the way you look at the world. I know that you've had this happen where you've been in a conversation with your spouse and went from conversation to argument while you tried to explain your perspective. And you're good at being right, but just being right gets you what you want. Sometimes it does, but often it doesn't. And recognize this: as an executive, your job is not to be right. Your job is to evoke the wisdom of your team, to make your organization amazing. And that doesn't happen by you just beating the drum and always being the one who's right. In fact, I guarantee you, if you're doing that and that's your operating system, that you are the expert in your organization and you play that role, then you are undermining your organization's success. And that is nothing more than your robot brain being in charge. If you were the oldest child growing up, you learned how to be the hero, the traditional one, the one who's smart, who's diligent, who's responsible. Now here you are as an executive or a leader 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, and you're doing the same thing. You're saying yes when you should say no. You're taking too much on when you should be delegating. Because the old voice is haunting you, your mom's voice. You remember the one: if you want it done right, do it yourself, she said. So you learned to do it yourself. You learn to be ultra responsible. You learn to sacrifice yourself and take care of everybody else. And when you do that, that's not you. That's robot brain in charge. That's you playing out the ingrained patterns that helped you survive and thrive when you came into the world. Your first 3, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12, 18 years. Now the question is, who are you letting make the decisions? Are you truly making conscious, intentional decisions about the way you're leading your life and leading your organization? Or are you stuck in some neurocircuitry that you downloaded early on? It is time to upgrade your leadership, to upgrade your internal software. And when I say upgrade your leadership, I mean, the beautiful thing is, because we have this neuroplasticity, right? Our brains have the ability to change, or they have the ability to become more deeply ingrained. It comes down to choice. And here's the thing that's difficult: ignorance is bliss. Keep doing the same thing and blaming the outside world and being right, that's blissful. It's easy. Ignorance is blissful. It's tough when you look at yourself and you take deep accountability, take deep responsibility. You take a deep ownership for the impact you leave in the world. When you do that, though, then you're truly in the driver's seat. Now, it's not easy and it's not comfortable. Interrupting robot brain is interrupting a lifetime of ingrained patterns. When I talk about ingrained patterns, think about how ingrained I'm talking about. When's the last time you read a book and had to stop and interpret the letters that you saw in the book? They had to stop and interpret the words. Open a book in Arabic and tell me how effective you will be at reading that. Yet people who learned Arabic will open the book and read it without even thinking about it. This is how ingrained that neurocircuitry is and how invisible it is to us. We read without even consciously knowing we're doing it. We just open a book and start reading. It's that natural. In the same way, when a problem's on the table, you immediately approach it a certain way. When somebody communicates, you immediately open your mouth and communicate a certain way without even any iota of awareness that what you're doing is playing out some trained and ingrained pattern that may or may not be taking you where you want to go. Nothing wrong with a robot brain, but sometimes the robot brain is playing out patterns that were installed decades ago, and it's time for an upgrade. So the question is, how do you upgrade the robot? Step one, how do you upgrade these ingrained patterns that you don't even see or know are there? And then you might even ask, oh, does it matter? Well, it all for me comes back to results. Are you living the life you want? Are you living the lifestyle you want? Are you having the influence that you want? Are you creating the situations that leave you content and happy? And I'm not talking about happy because the external world is validating your self-concept. No, I'm talking about a deeper contentment that is okay regardless of what happens in the external world. This is the goal right here. If you can become grounded and okay regardless of what you're perceiving, regardless of what you're making up about your perceptions and the narrative you're creating, right? And that's worthwhile. The man worthwhile is the man who can smile. Meditation teacher used to say, the man worthwhile is the man who can smile when everything goes dead wrong. You see, it's easy when robot brain gets validated. And I see things in the world that validate me as the hard worker, as the smart one, as the responsible one. When I get validation, it releases a certain emotion. There's an emotion anchored that I experience. And there's a belief set. To be valuable, I have to be the guy who moderates the tension. I have to be the guy who's responsible, the hardworking, the diligent. And if I'm not, there's something wrong. That's when my internal ghost starts to take over. And that ghost will haunt me in the form of self-doubt, in the form of guilt, in the form of fear, in the form of regret. And then that emotion will manifest physically and begin to drive my behavior. And that's all because of this robot brain that is so sneaky. And we believe it to be true, but you are much more than your ideas or your self-concept. You're much more than your idea of who you think you are. You're much more than just the person who performs. You have value beyond just being an exceptional executive. And when you step into that place, beyond language, your larger energetic center, that's where the power lies, right? When you can come from that place of open receptivity and power, you have the ability to make dramatic and traumatic positive changes in your organization, in your life, with your family, at your church, in your community. You get one shot at it, right? You get one shot at life, and most people go through the motions, staying in the comfort zone, letting the robot brain dictate how they show up. And they avoid risk. But the key is to be able to take reasonable risk, push the edges, step out of your comfort zone, which means you're challenging that robot brain and you're instilling new neural programming. There's an old saying, with your thoughts, you create the world. And this is completely more powerful and profound than you think. In fact, it is the most powerful and profound thought that you will ever have in your mind. To recognize that all of the thoughts and all of the thinking are what drive your experience in this world as a leader. And when you start to change your cognitive framework and change your thinking, when you disrupt that robot brain, then you create space. And sometimes it's uncomfortable because it's the space of not knowing. It's a space of uncertainty. It's a space of not having the answer, but it's also the fruitful space of potentiality, right? This is where new patterns happen. This is where potential comes from. This is the space of creativity and innovation, but it all happens when you suspend that robot brain. When you suspend the robot, you put yourself in a habit of presence. Now, remember, there's 4 core elements to conscious leadership. When you cut through either the caveman brain or the robot brain, it starts with being present here in this moment, not letting your mind scramble to the future and create the anxiety that comes with that, and not being caught up in the past with the emotion that comes with that. What emotion am I talking about? Oh, the anger, the regret, the guilt of what I should have done. I can't tell you, I've worked more than one leader, many leaders who let guilt sneak in and start to make the decisions for them. Why does that matter? Well, why are they guilty? They're guilty because they've learned to be the hero early on, to be the one who takes care of everybody, the one who makes the authority figures happy at all costs, the ones who are self-sacrificing to take care of everybody else. When they don't do that, they start to feel guilty. And so in order not to feel guilty, they always revert to the same old behavior. That's robot brain. Interrupting that is the key to being exceptional. So being able to be present in this moment, and then from the place of presence, you can start to own your attention. Attention is one of those skills that most people never really learn how to strengthen. Where you place your attention is everything. And when we talk about developing awareness of this robot brain, it's about moving your attention from the outside world, which you've become a master of. That's why you're a leader, right? Because you've been producing by focusing your attention and getting mastery over your ability to produce, But now the next level of mastery is turning that awareness and learning to bring your attention and your awareness inside of yourself, because that's where you unleash the power to influence, to create systems, and to create teams that absolutely thrive. And it's not done by doing what you always did. No, it's done by creating new patterns. So, number one, you have to pause that pattern of thinking, pause the pattern of feeling. Just notice. You can't change your feelings. You can change your thinking. You can't change your feeling. Don't try to do it. Just notice it. Notice how it manifests physiologically in your body. There's presence and awareness. Then, and only then, are you in a position to choice. Ah, now, choosing opens the door for you to access your genius brain. So, out of the gate, the work is to be able to notice what are the habits in your robot brain. What are the habits? And here's the thing that is difficult for most folks to really get to understand, because again, it's like the lens that you look at the world through. You don't see it. It's like looking at language. You don't even recognize that you understand language. But when you look at a foreign language, you don't understand it. Learning new patterns is no different than learning a foreign language, right? And what we're going to do, what the work is to be able to uproot some of the patterns that aren't working for you. Think about when you were young, you planted all these seeds into your consciousness. I planted seeds to be the responsible, to be the mediator, to be the one who lightens the mood. Sometimes that does not get me the result I want. When there's tension at home and I show up with a joke, my spouse gets more frustrated because she doesn't feel recognized, heard, and respected. That's not always the right answer. Recognize that seed got planted when I was young, and now every time I get validated for that joke, for that humor, for showing up the way I always learned to show up, every time I get validated, I nurture that seed. And sometimes those seeds don't get me the result I want. So the key is to stop nurturing the trees. Stop watering the tree and plant some new ones. And what does that mean? It means back full circle with your thoughts, you create the world. Notice your thinking. Start practicing patterns of thinking about the person that you are becoming, the executive, the leader that you are becoming. To phrase them as I am statements. I am a leader who creates accountability. I am a leader who follows through. I am a leader who leaves others better off. You see, those three statements that I practice put me in a position to be more intentional about how I evolve as a leader and not just falling back to neurocircuitry I developed early on. Instead of just playing out the same pattern, that robot brain, I get to choose. Choice is hard. But I'll tell you what, as humans, we are consistently evolving, or we're deepening the ditches that we fall into. The choice is yours. If you want to become exceptional, you have to learn to suspend your robot brain. You have to recognize that what got you here will not get you there. However, you have this unlimited power, you have unlimited creativity, and you have this wellspring of ability to evolve, to change, and to become the best version of yourself so that you can create an amazing organization and a life worth living. As Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. He was living in the heart of awareness. That's your job, to live in the heart of awareness. Now, I love this stuff, understanding how our brain functions and coming up with ways to do it differently. As I've said before, I've worked with hundreds, literally thousands. I don't like to give my age away. Thousands of leaders, whether in groups, in keynotes, and have books coming out. So look for the latest book. Just go to upgradeyourleadership.com and you'll find the book that's just coming out, Lead Yourself First. Because before you can leave an impact on others, before you can change your organization, before you can manage your children, before you can create a meaningful impact in your team, there's one thing you must do without exception: lead yourself first. If you want to start your conference with an inspired talk that gets your participants leaning in, wanting more, and that sets them up to be fully engaged and excited about the rest of the conference, we can help them lead themselves first. To really embrace the conference that you're putting together, we love to be partners with someone just like you. Check us out. We'll help you lead yourself first, and we'll help your conference thrive.